My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 32 years old, and I'm an administrative assistant at a small law firm. The fluorescent lights of the probate court waiting room hummed, a cruel counterpoint to the silence between my stepmother, Brenda, and me. I'd spent the last 6 months sleeping in the back of my old Ford Ranger, the seats folded down, a thin sleeping bag my only comfort against the biting San Jose nights. Brenda sat across from me, perfectly composed in a tailored suit, her expression one of practiced sympathy. She clasped her hands, her manicured nails gleaming under the harsh light. "Sarah, I truly don't know what to tell you," she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet every word cut like glass. "Your father's estate, your inheritance, it just vanished. All $850,000 of it." My hands gripped the worn strap of my backpack, knuckles white. Vanished. The word echoed, a hollow, impossible sound. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand answers, but I just stared, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The humiliation of my existence, the constant chill, the gnawing hunger, all for nothing. I had nowhere to go, no family to turn to, or so I thought. I didn't know then that the quiet, unassuming man who lived 3 states away, my Uncle Arthur, would be the one to finally walk into my life and unravel Brenda's carefully constructed lie. To understand why Brenda's words hit me so hard, you need to know about my mother. She passed away when I was 12, a quiet, sudden illness that left a gaping hole in our lives. My father, bless his kind heart, was devastated. My mother, Eleanor, had been a savvy woman, a real estate agent who'd invested wisely. She left a trust for me, specifically designed to mature when I turned 30, or upon my father's death, whichever came first. It was a substantial sum meant to be my foundation. My father was the trustee, and he always assured me it was safe, growing. 3 years after Mom died, Dad met Brenda. She was a whirlwind of charm and efficiency, an event planner with a smile that could disarm anyone. I was a confused teenager, eager for any semblance of a complete family, and Brenda seemed to fill the void. She was attentive, always asking about my schoolwork, my dreams. But even then, I noticed little things. She'd gently steer Dad's conversations about finances, always suggesting a new, more aggressive investment strategy for Mom's trust, or a consolidation that would simplify things. Dad, ever trusting, went along with it. "Brenda's so good with numbers, honey," he'd say, patting my hand. "She's just making sure your future is secure." I believed him. My job as an administrative assistant at a small law firm wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I was good at organizing, at tracking details, at noticing discrepancies in paperwork. I lived modestly, always knowing I had my mother's legacy waiting for me. I'd even started making plans for it, thinking about a down payment on a small house, maybe a master's degree. My father, a gentle soul, had started to decline a few years ago. Alzheimer's, the doctors said. It was heartbreaking to watch him fade. Brenda, ever the dutiful wife, took over everything, managing his care, his finances, even his doctor's appointments. She was always there, a constant presence, a gatekeeper. When Dad finally passed away last year, it was a release for him, but a new kind of confinement for me. Brenda, as his widow and the designated executor of his will, became the sole point of contact for everything. I turned 30 just 3 months after Dad died, and naturally, I started asking about the trust. Brenda's responses were always vague. "Oh, Sarah, probate is just such a labyrinth, isn't it? So many forms, so many delays." She'd sigh, wring her hands, and promise to look into it. A month later, my apartment lease was up for renewal. My landlord was raising the rent, and without the inheritance, I couldn't afford it. I called Brenda, explaining my situation, hoping she could expedite things. Her voice was cool, distant. "I'm sorry, dear. These things take time. Perhaps you could find a cheaper place?" I didn't have time. I packed what I could into my old Ford Ranger and moved into it. I found a quiet, well-lit street near a park where I could blend in, parking in a different spot each night. I showered at the gym before work, ate cheap meals I cooked on a portable stove, and tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. I kept a small, framed photo of my mother and father on the dashboard, a constant reminder of the life I'd lost and the promise I was fighting for. Each night, I'd trace my mother's smile, wondering what she would have done. The situation grew more desperate. My savings dwindled. I started skipping meals. Brenda, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. I'd see photos on social media, new designer clothes, lavish vacations, a complete renovation of the house Dad had left her. She never offered to help, never suggested I stay with her. Each time I called, she had a new excuse: the bank is dragging its feet, there's a tax issue, the lawyers are reviewing it. Her tone shifted from sympathetic to slightly annoyed, as if I were being unreasonable for asking about my money. Then came the call for the probate court meeting, the one where she finally dropped the bomb. $850,000 vanished. The number was precise, the sum I had always been told was mine. I sat there, numb, watching her pack her expensive handbag. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I truly wish I had better news, Sarah. Life is just so unpredictable, isn't it? She offered a small, sad smile, then walked out, leaving me alone in the sterile waiting room, the weight of her words crushing me. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, the cold of the truck seeping into my bones, mirroring the chill in my heart. Vanished. It was impossible. My mother's trust was carefully structured. Money doesn't just disappear. My administrative assistant job had exposed me to enough legal documents to know that. I started thinking about the vague answers, the delays, the sudden opulence in Brenda's life. It wasn't just bad luck or probate complexities. It was something deliberate. Brenda wanted me out of the picture, out of her way, and she was using my own inheritance to do it. One evening, huddled in my sleeping bag, trying to read by the dim glow of my phone, I remembered a conversation from years ago. My mother had an older brother, Arthur. He lived in Oregon, a quiet man who rarely visited, but he'd always been kind. He and my mother were close, and he knew about her trust for me. I found his old address in a dusty photo album I kept in a box under my seat. I scribbled it down, a faint flicker of hope igniting in the darkness. He was a long shot, but he was family. I drafted a careful letter, explaining my situation, omitting the truck part, just saying I was in a difficult financial spot and Brenda was being unhelpful with my inheritance. I mailed it, not expecting much. Days turned into weeks. The gas light in my Ranger was perpetually on. I started parking in more secluded areas, feeling increasingly vulnerable. I was always looking over my shoulder, always cold, always hungry. The little photo of my parents on my dashboard seemed to mock me with its image of a secure past. Then, one Tuesday morning, after I'd showered at the gym and was about to head to work, I saw a sedan parked a few spaces down from my Ranger. A man was leaning against it, looking at my truck. He was older, with kind eyes and a familiar set to his jaw. My heart leaped. It was Arthur. He saw me, straightened up, and walked over. "Sarah," he asked, his voice raspy with emotion. "It's Arthur. Your Uncle Arthur." He looked at my truck, then at me, his gaze taking in my worn clothes and the exhaustion in my eyes. I must have looked like a ghost. "I got your letter," he said, his voice quiet. "I came as soon as I could." He had driven all night. We sat in his car, and I finally broke down, telling him everything, the vague excuses, the escalating delays, Brenda's sudden wealth, and the final, crushing blow in the probate court. I even admitted to living in my truck. His face hardened as I spoke. "Brenda always had a way of getting what she wanted," he murmured. "But this is too far." Arthur pulled out a small, worn notebook. "Your mother and I talked about that trust often," he said. "She was meticulous. She made sure I knew where the original documents were stored, just in case. She didn't fully trust your father's new wife, even back then." He explained that my mother had kept copies of the original trust agreement and investment statements in a safety deposit box that she had opened in his name, with instructions for him to access it if she passed and I needed help. He had forgotten about it until my letter. The next day, Arthur and I went to the bank. With his ID and my mother's death certificate, he accessed the box. Inside, we found meticulously organized copies of the trust agreement, quarterly statements, and a detailed record of the initial $850,000. Not only that, but there were records of transfers from the trust account into a private account in Brenda's name, starting just after my father's illness began to worsen. The paper trail was clear, undeniable. It didn't vanish, it was systematically stolen. My paralegal training kicked in. I recognized the account numbers, the dates, the signatures. This wasn't just incompetence, it was fraud. Arthur immediately called a lawyer he knew, a sharp estate attorney in San Francisco. Within a week, we had an appointment. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, reviewed the documents. He was grim-faced. "This is a clear case of elder abuse and embezzlement, Sarah," he stated, tapping the stack of papers. "Brenda, as executor, had a fiduciary duty to you. She breached it spectacularly." He advised us to file a formal complaint with the probate court and initiate a civil lawsuit. The confrontation with Brenda came a month later, not in a sterile waiting room, but in Mr. Harrison's office. Arthur sat beside me, his presence a solid anchor. Brenda walked in, her usual composed self, but her eyes narrowed when she saw Arthur. Mr. Harrison laid out the evidence, the trust documents, the bank statements detailing the transfers, the dates, the amounts. $850,000 didn't vanish, Ms. Davies, he said, his voice calm but firm. It was transferred, systematically, into your personal accounts. We have the proof. Brenda's face drained of color. Her practiced sympathy evaporated, replaced by a flicker of pure panic. She tried to bluster, to deny, to claim my father had authorized it, but the dates on the transfers clearly showed they began when his cognitive decline was significant. Mr. Harrison informed her that we were prepared to press criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud, in addition to the civil suit, if she didn't return the full amount, with interest. The fight was far from over. Brenda hired her own lawyer, who tried to negotiate, to minimize her culpability. But the evidence Arthur and I had was too strong. The bank had even flagged some of the larger transfers, though Brenda had managed to smooth things over with them at the time. After weeks of legal back and forth, facing the real threat of prison time, Brenda finally capitulated. She agreed to return the full $850,000, plus a significant sum for damages and legal fees, effectively wiping out most of her assets. She also had to resign as executor of my father's estate, and a neutral third party was appointed to manage the remaining, much smaller, funds. It took another 2 months for the funds to be fully recovered and transferred to my new, secure account. The day the notification came through, I sat in Arthur's guest room, where I'd been staying, staring at the numbers on my screen. It wasn't a triumph, not really. It was a recovery. I had lost my father, my home, and 6 months of my life to a cold, calculated betrayal. But I had also found my footing, and the quiet strength to fight for what was mine. I bought a small, modest apartment with a down payment, finally unpacking the boxes that had lived in my truck for so long. The Ford Ranger, my reluctant home for so many months, got a full detailing. I still kept the small, framed photo of my mother and father on its dashboard. But now, when I looked at it, I didn't just see loss. I saw the legacy of a woman who planned for her daughter, and the quiet determination of a man who traveled 3 states to help. My truck, once a symbol of humiliation, became a reminder of resilience, and the day my uncle walked in, changing everything.